Hello everyone. This is Erin from the WRLA and we are now live. Welcome to today's Teachable Tuesday webinar on construction technology trends. Before we get started, and in perfect timing with today's webinar, WRLA is proud to introduce a new online education course. We have partnered with SAS Polytech in Saskatchewan to offer Building Science and Energy Efficiency Awareness. This course is designed for anyone in building design, construction, and management, and who wants a better understanding of how buildings work. It provides a solid grounding in the fundamentals of building science, from air movement and moisture management to energy efficient windows and doors. It will also get you up to speed on national building code requirements for new buildings, additions, and major alterations. If you're interested in more information on this course, please email me at erinl@wrla.org. Okay, now on to business. Let's talk construction trends. As mentioned, I'm Erin and I'm your Member Services and Solutions Manager, and with me is Jessica, who is your Trade Show and Events Manager. She will take over after Hamid is done and handle all the questions. Just a few quick housekeeping items. Everyone is muted, so if you have any questions, please use the chat icon at the bottom of your screen to type in any questions during the webinar. Both myself and Jess will monitor the questions, and Jess will facilitate them at the end with Hammond. Finally, the slides will be sent out and will be posted on our website. So who's presenting today's webinar? Well, that would be Hamid Chaudhry. Hamid is currently the Director of Virtual Design and Construction, responsible for Ellis Don's civil and ICI projects in Western Canada. Hamid is several years of experience in the agricultural, engineering, and construction industries. He has worked in a wide range of capacities, both on the design consulting and construction management side, including architectural technologist, project coordinator, building information modeling, virtual design and construction, working with BIM and digital workflows on projects. Hamad's role is to implement VDC tools to provide the necessary balance between technology, innovation, and economic efficiency, and to offer appropriate and novel solutions to construction problems. All right. Now that you've gotten acquainted with our speaker, Hamid, you could take it over from here.
Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
And I'm just gonna share my screen here. Give me one sec. All right. So let me know when everything's good on your end, Erin, there. So today I'm going to talk about construction technology and trends, and sort of give a little bit of an overview of what's going on in the construction industry and the application of technology there. So if you could pull up the poll, Erin, the first few questions here. We just want to see how people are sort of in terms of understanding construction technology, where maybe the audience's experience and background may be, and then also help me gauge sort of how to sort of tune this conversation further. But as we continue, if you look at construction, you know, we reached what you could call a peak, essentially, you know, around when we built the Empire State Building in a lot of ways. So we went through the Industrial Revolution. We, you know, went through a lot of improvements in terms of manufacturing steel and some of those kind of building elements. And if you look at it here, we were able to, you know, build the building, the structure, essentially less than a year span for something that at the time was very monumental. Okay. So the poll results are in. Are we as a society as advanced in our construction industry as compared to other industries? So about 83% of the folks think yes, and about 17% are saying no. So it's interesting to see that, and we'll continue and see how you guys feel after. the way that we've sort of been looking at the baseline of productivity and improvement within construction is looking at other industries. So this is a chart from McKinsey explaining the delta, if you will. So productivity per man hour in construction is in blue, compared to manufacturing industries within that orange or red line. And increased project complexity on the construction side, increased with, environmental impacts and safety requirements and the quality of what we're putting together. If you look at that, we haven't really bridged that gap quite as effectively. And digging a little bit deeper into it, if you look at sort of how we build houses, we're not doing balloon framing anymore by any means, but many of the means and methods in a lot of senses are still the same, right? So we start with an idea, we develop a plan, transfer that onto paper, get our trades and raw materials to show up and put it together and sort of figure out some of these areas, right? So the industry hasn't evolved to use the tools the way that we could argue other spots have, right? So yeah, we definitely got better drills, better power tools, better engineered lumber, arguably, and improvements in that front. But we still got a lot of individuals just showing up with raw material and putting it together, right? And if you look at the other industries, so this index here is what's known as a digitization index. It shows, some of the leaders, so like ICT, information technology, media, and finance, sort of all the way at the top, leading, if you will. And if you look towards the bottom, that's sort of where we are, where with, construction comes in next to agriculture and hunting. So we haven't really been digitized in the same extent. So now, tying this into our lives a little bit more, we've seen this actually revolution take place in front of us, if you will, right? So this box of CDs was not really too foreign to many of us, a decade or so ago. And, right in front of us, the transformation, every single song ever produced is in your pocket at any time. And this has happened slowly over time as technology grew and the marketplace's demand grew, and all the technology and people, sort of the environment, the market came together to make the solution viable, right? So we've got the network, 3G, 4G, and now we've got this LTE and 5G coming up. We've got the hardware from MP3 players and iPods, and now everybody's got an iPhone or a mobile device. And then on the software side too, first we had like iTunes, Apple Music, now with Spotify, it's really pushed that industry. Another key way of looking at this could be looking at the finance industry, right? So gone are the days when you'd go to your teller and you'd see like a handwritten ledger and log. I don't know how many of you guys remember that little book that you could take to the bank. And now, you just got your watch, your phone, your tap, you pay, you're good to go. Those kind of improvements are what we're trying to get into the construction realm and the trends we're seeing. Another one that's solidifying this in the automotive industry now is autonomous vehicles. So our number one mode of transportation essentially for decades and for the life of essentially everybody on this call right now is evolving right in front of us, right? So modern vehicles are equipped with what they call safety features, adaptive cruise control, automatic braking, blind spot monitoring, lane departure warnings. All of these are semi-autonomous functions, right? Slowly removing the human element, if you will, from our vehicles so that they can become fully autonomous. So, you have companies like Tesla now that have proven the marketplace, not only, for electric vehicles, but they're looking at the self-driving aspect of it. And then we've got a lot of investment, a lot of big names looking into it using, LiDAR kind of technologies and building that. Unlike construction, technology has evolved at an accelerating pace, right? So you're seeing exponential growth for the last several decades in terms of the improvement and the productivity that we're getting out of technology, right? So this is sort of like the law of accelerating returns, or Moore's law, and sort of looking at the exponential growth that we're seeing. And eventually, based on some of these trends, they predict that, we're going to have enough power with our computers and our processors to sort of surpass the equivalence of all the human brains combined, right? That's roughly in 2045. And, we may not be leading there within our lifetime. Maybe 2045 may not be as realistic of a goal, but we've definitely seen that exponential growth. And now this is exciting for me, and our lifetime now is the blend of the two, right? So we have technology, which has been just exponentially growing, and then construction, which in terms of productivity has been very stagnant. Two completely separate worlds, right? So we're seeing the two of them sort of merge together now. Construction technology, contact, and all of these kind of fascinating areas of kind of opportunity and improvement. When we look at actually one of the best indicators of innovation, especially since the internet decade, Y2K onwards, has been sort of venture capital funding and all of that kind of aspect of it. And typically construction wasn't where you'd see a lot of that. You'd think of Facebook, Uber, Google. In 2009, there's less than, $100 million of venture capital in the construction technology space. Fast forward that to now, and we're well over $1 billion. There's what's known as unicorn companies have come out of construction technology space, and now this has sort of become a map of focus for a lot of companies to invest and grow. And the situation is sort of backed up by the market, right? So we've had these labor shortages now, coupled with increased complexity of our buildings. So, not only are we getting more complicated with our facades and skins and building elements, but our mechanical, electrical systems and the requirements we have for all of that has gone up that much more. So we need to be able to build a lot more complex situations in buildings. And, within construction, again, going back to that productivity one, we don't have a lot of productivity improvements, because we don't have much to invest back into IT and R&D. And now we've seen these disruptive technologies becoming available to everyone. So you take these four forces together, and what you're going to see in the future essentially is, we don't know when per se, but coming up in the future is, a site office that's connected to the cloud continuously. We see elements of this right now. We're going to have modular building components coming up, showing up just in time, and using, robots essentially to help with the assembly process on that side, using autonomous, drones and using sensors to keep track of site activity, process, what's coming, going, so on and so forth, and then using autonomous equipment to help perform the work. And all of this information is then aggregated, streamlined, whatever you want to call it, provided back to, the head office, management, stakeholders, however you want to sort of receive that. So switching gears a bit, looking at some of the other trends that we're seeing, within virtual reality, there's a few different spaces. So we have augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. So VR is just your typical virtual reality. You put your goggles in, it's all digital, there's no real world context there. AR is more, you put these goggles in and you got your digital content on top of what your actual real world is, right? So think about it as a projection on top of what you're seeing, but if there's a wall or something comes in the way, it's not smart enough. And that's where MR or mixed reality sort of comes in, where it allows your content to interact with what's going on and accurately understand your environment. Within the industry right now, we're seeing a lot of applications and trends with VR, and AR is on the design review side. For example, you can get your stakeholders, architects, engineers together, and instead of having just your typical, model that architects used to do all the time, and everybody sort of looking at it and not really poking it because you don't want to break that, you have this virtual model that's shared in front of multiple stakeholders. You can zoom in, out, cut sections, dissect the information how you want. Going on to the construction side, we're able to leverage this information and sort of, the goal is to project this onto the site. So as you're walking around, you have your augmented reality glasses and you're seeing progress versus what's supposed to be there, and really highlighting the efficiencies of having the digital information overlaid with the real context of the world. And this is sort of what the device would look like, right? So you've got your sensors and the glass overlaid on top, still room for safety glasses, of course, and builds in with the hard hat. once you throw it on, maybe you'd see an interface like this where it's projecting the future works that are supposed to be coming on, comparing it to what's actually already there, and sort of highlighting them, giving you progress in real time based on what's there, of like, how much, for example, pipe have you installed, how much framing's done, so on and so forth, and maybe getting this kind of report out, from your glasses on site. And taking a step further is really collaborating and integrating into the process. So you could, use these tools as technologies from the site to maybe start an RFI, request for information. So say, hey, this pipe's not going to fit here. We need to change something. Send that off to the architect design team. Validation in terms of, hey, here's our progress. Is things in the right location? And all that kind of essentially, securing information in a visual context, right? Not relying on just 2D sheets of paper, but giving people 3D sort of tie-in of the real world within the virtual of what we're trying to replicate. And a product that's actually out there, right now is the Trimble, for example, headset. So it's not just a futuristic thing, it's something that's in the industry and is available and is showing progress for us there. The next area or kind of focus realm you could talk about is prefabrication and modularization. Again, massive trend. Just, even 10 years ago, maybe there wasn't really as much space, companies and competition in this industry, but we'll see how it's evolved, and where a lot of the insights and I guess inspiration comes from is a lot of the design for manufacturing and assembly kind of industry. So you have automotive, where they've been really honing this process forever, right? And then you look at shipbuilding, which again has taken it, honed this process and taken it to the same level, where a lot of the softwares and tools that we're using on the construction side have sort of flowed or inspired from these areas, right? And then, of course, you have the aerospace, aeronautic industry, which is the same thing. You're looking at a global scale with, multiple different partners and supply chains and design teams and so on and so forth. And, without the use and rationalization of these technology and digital workflows, it would be next to impossible to get these built within the realm of cost effectiveness and efficiencies and so on and so forth that we're seeing. So, we are seeing that on the construction side. It's just not on every project. So here's an example of one of our projects in Toronto where, not only was everything 3D modeled to the nth degree with different subcontractors for the different elements of the supply chain, but we were also able to use, different technologies such as laser scanning, reality capture, and all of that. And the end product is what you see on the right. And then here's another example of something that's really prevalent with these modularization and prefabrication elements is multi-trade racks. So we see this a lot in, hospital kind of buildings or any kind of hospitality where it's really repetitive and you can sort of get away with that. And this is really showing us the future of the modular design, essentially, is we can take that a step further and do entire units. So maybe bathroom pads, or if you're looking at a hotel, an entire suite. And then the 3D information and the 2D information are really tied to one another, right? So if you change something in your plans, your cut sheet, your quantities, your orders, the views, everything is sort of interrelated. And then the way that you produce this is really where the key differentiator comes in, right? So it's the trend is similar to prefabrication with this, in that you're having a lot of strategies and implementation from future companies and investing in this area or technology. So Elliston, for example, has Elliston Modular. We've invested in this as well. And what you're trying to do is standardize the process to assemble as much possible offsite in a warehouse like you see before it actually comes to the site. And the benefit is standardization, a controlled environment, controlled workers, all of that cuts down on cost, lead time, gives you better quality and safety, and essentially is giving us efficiencies at scale, which is what the market is kind of rationalizing now, right? Another key trend that we're starting to see is robotics. This one brings up a lot of interesting feedback on what people may feel like in the industry, right? Is, hey, we don't want robots taking our jobs and so on and so forth. So, it'd be a good time if we can get another poll going here, Aaron, is just to see how long maybe folks have been in the industry and some of those ones. And to see, you know, have you been hearing this robots are going to take your job for a while, or are you a little bit near and maybe you have a little bit of a different approach to it? Very interesting. Okay, perfect. So we've got some, quite a few folks with good experience. So none of the young and green aspiring. Okay, so then I think some of this content might be good for you, for the folks in the audience here. One of the things we've seen, and this was actually implemented on a project in Edmonton, was the exoskeleton. So now what we're doing is taking technology and robotics and helping the actual people on site, giving you a little bit more flexibility, power, whatever it is, to do repetitive tasks, heavy tasks. Some of these suits can help the person lift, you know, 2 to 3 times more than an average person could, right? So a lot of those kind of blending the two together. Another aspect of it is, you know, drones. So we're using drones, for example, in Calgary, on the West Calgary Ring Road project to capture not only progress, you know, aerial photos so we can see how things progress week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, but also using it for survey grade data. So, you know, you fly this drone instead of having a traditional land surveyor out there, and you get pretty much similar accuracy to that, but the drone takes us, you know, maybe half a day to a day versus somebody that would need to survey the entire site nonstop for a month, right? So there's a lot of those, but what we're starting to see is the possibility of AI taking over here too. So we don't necessarily need somebody to be a trained and operated drone pilot. Eventually, the systems will be built within the drone to be able to do that. Another aspect too, where we're starting to see is 3D printing. So it became very, not became very, it still is like, we need a lot of human intervention in the sense that, yeah, we have 3D models, but we've got to take these 3D models and redo them or break them down in a way that the printer is going to be able to manage this information, right, and replicate it. So, you know, you see examples of rebar expansion joints, a little bit of a mock-up in the middle of an assembly, and then on the right side, you see sort of a sequencing for how we're going to be building a tower. One step further, what we're going to be able to see is we could dump our models and all of these optimizations, and you know, the 3D printer really could optimize it on its own and figure that out. And another aspect is actually we've seen a couple of projects across the world where they're using 3D printers to do in situ, like concrete printing and site work like that. So a lot of improvements there. Another one that we've seen is, you know, a famous one is called SAM, semi-autonomous mason, is a robot mason where you can have this machine and it can go and, you know, pretty much lay bricks along there. So right now, from what we did in our research, it's not quite there in the sense that you still need a person there with them. Yeah, I can stack the bricks, but, you know, you need to operate, make sure nothing breaks down, so on and so forth. But with the R&D and investment and all of that future growth potential here, that's another interesting realm. And another thing that we've seen a lot of growth in is, you know, autonomous vehicles. So a lot of this is in the mining industry right now, but it's starting to make its way over to construction in the same aspect. We have a lot of trucks coming in and out, moving gravel, moving garbage, dropping material, so on and so forth. A lot of these could be automated and efficiencies could be added in the process in that regard. And then lastly is, you know, simple tasks and labor as well. So, you know, drywall, for example, is still something where we may not be able to get robots on every site to do, but if we could get this kind of efficiency going where a robot's at the same level of installing drywall as a human one-to-one, you know, maybe we can get some of those folks to focus on some more skilled tasks, more finishing based tasks, and get, you know, efficiencies from robotics in that sense. And this actually is a robot out of Japan, so it's already in place. I think they've already done R&D on construction sites out there as well. And then the last cool piece of robotics that we can't not talk about is Spot. So this piece of machinery from Boston Dynamics is being used in R&D on construction sites. What you see on top of this right now is a laser scanner attached, essentially. And, you know, so it can go out on a construction site, walk the site by itself, capture progress. It could do it daily. It could do it at night when there's no one around. and you get really the ability of having like an accurate representation and rebuild of your project almost whenever you want. And there's a lot of key benefits with this, right? So first thing is QA/QC, of making sure things are installed within tolerance where they should be, when they should be. If you're able to capture this data sort of end of day overnight, but the next morning, if it's processing and you can review that information in the morning meeting with your trades, that would be a game changer. Another one is just general progress photos. So, we are humans after all, we make mistakes. We've been on a lot of projects where you may need to take and document photos. So what if you missed a photo or an area? If you have something like this, that's sort of on site, anytime, any piece, whether it's pre-board or somebody just roughed in, we'll have all of that kind of captured. So now sort of gathering more of the intelligence side. So we've seen a lot of the technology and sort of that aspect of it, but what about the intelligence of gathering information back? And that's another boom that we're seeing. For some of you that have been around for a while, which is a lot of our group, the importance of concrete, especially within, infrastructure, large projects, and how important it is on our side to monitor it, right? So once you pour concrete, you want to make sure it's curing or humidity level, and all this kind of stuff, right? The temperature over time. And what we used to do was drop these sort of sensors with batteries in there, and they would record this data and log it. And then we'd come back after the pour is done and chop them off and bring them back to the office and sort of, decode them and read it out and print the graph. Now the technology's enabled it so that you have these kind of smart sensors that you can leave in there. You pour into the data, Wi-Fi collects, and we don't have to worry about going back to the field and finding out, oh no, this sensor may have been rained on or not covered properly, so we can't recover that data. So that's just one aspect. Another one we're starting to see is worker trackability. So you put it on a hard hat, on a belt, on a vest, and you can see where your workers are, what floor, productivity, kind of insights, analyze that aspect of it, but also for safety, right? So if something happens, you can see who's in an affected area, for example, and all that kind of stuff. So giving us insight beyond what sort of we've actually seen within the construction industry is just starting to come through. And now using cameras. So again, cameras have been there for a while, but what if we take cameras and pair them with computers? So, AI and machine learning. One thing that we're seeing is a huge area is improvement for, machines, hoist, crane time, anything like that. If a machine algorithm can sort of take a look at it, we can sort of find a lot of productivity gains, right? So for example, on this, they're showing how the productivity rate different hoists are running at, right? So they've got one at 44%, one at 12%, one at 0%. And then as the project's going on, you can collect this data and optimize for future or for current use as well. And mounting information and sensors, cameras on cranes, like this crane camera here, will give us not only a bird's eye view and sort of an analysis of seeing progress as it's going on, but coupling it again with machine learning and computer vision, AI, we're able to sort of use it to track productivity, cycle time, safety hazards, provide a lot of insights that otherwise, again, we're relying on maybe your site foreman or somebody equivalent to go and write it down, track logs, and all this information all over the place. And then again, like the safety aspect of if we have these machines available, in that construction site of the future, it would stop the excavator if that person got too close because you're within that realm of danger. So now the next aspect is we've got all this information and data. We need somewhere that we can actually interact with it and process it, right? And that's where the cloud comes in. So a lot of our industry, if you will, and again, I'm not talking about so much the advanced projects, I'm saying the overall industry as a whole, I'd say works within this realm of, we're siloed. We have a lot of different systems between different people. Things get dropped and sort of slip between the cracks. And we end up with not as much effective communication sometimes. Sometimes that adds to project delays and costs. A lot of times, and if not every time, what happens is the project suffers, right? with the cloud, the aim is, hey, why not dump all of this information into the cloud or host it, using the internet where it can be all secure, it can be sort of backed up, it can provide all the stakeholders access to the information. And, in our sort of BIM side or VDC side of things, it's called like a single source of truth, essentially, is what you want, right? You don't want to dig through your emails and files and your desktop to look for the latest drawings or orders or whatever it may be. Just living in a cloud environment, everybody has access to that. And by having that implemented, what we're able to see is increased mobility, right? Hosting information in the cloud enables our workers to have access from the field. So you can sync all the data if if you're in a situation where you're remote. So you have it available with you when you go on site. A lot of the sites are smart connected now, right? Like you have Wi-Fi and internet available. The other aspect too is it gives the folks in the field a little bit more confidence and ability to communicate, right? So breaking up those silos between the people in the field installing and the people maybe who are the designers and other stakeholders who need to provide information ultimately to keep things progressing. And this real-time collaboration essentially is something that in the past would cause a lot of issues in terms of, delay times. RFI didn't get answered in time, so we were not able to make this change. With these cloud platforms, what we're seeing is oftentimes with high priority items, you can get same day kind of answers or resolutions, which again is something that's atypical, right? And then the backbone of having something in the cloud and having your processes there is you can create dashboards for everyone, right? So here's an example where, you've got your job site camera, you've got a little bit of an overview of your 3D model, kind of the high tracking issues on the project and all that. One-stop shop, everyone can jump in to pull out these insights. Maybe you can create reports if you want. Whereas the old way of doing it without this with the fragmentation, it wouldn't be as let's just say feasible for every stakeholder on the project to log into this whenever they wanted to pull that information up, right? And essentially the biggest thing is improved security and cloud security now. So cloud has secure infrastructure in the sense that we have everything that we need in one area, one location that has automatic backups and redundancy. So if there's a natural disaster or system failure or somebody deletes the file, we can go and get that information back, right? So this is what it used to look like essentially for us on site, right? So costs have gone down for physical infrastructure on site. Consolidating all the project data to the cloud reduces the need to buy this hardware, maintain it, and have it on premise, right? And essentially the net result is also some efficiency gains, right? You may input some data several times, for example, into different spreadsheets and emails and databases. But if you're truly on a cloud source and we have a single source of truth, you only need to enter the data information once. From there, it can be distributed, viewed, so on and so forth, and reducing that double data entry, if you will, as well. The next bucket I want to talk about is 3D scanning. So this is reality capture, where we're able to go out into the field with these devices and capture one-to-one with really high accuracy of what is out there. So typically you'd see a device like this one. Some of the ones that we've purchased range from $60,000, $70,000 to well over $100,000 per unit, which isn't too cost effective, but there's been a lot of improvements in this realm, and we're seeing, for example, this one here is a Leica BLK to go a handheld scanner. You can get the full kit for $10,000 to $20,000 roughly, which is hugely more beneficial in terms of adaptability for smaller contractors and designers and so on and so forth. And you can use that data to compare everything that we talked about previously, right? Your QA/QC progress, is there any variation? Are we going to be within tolerance? So for example, is this wall or pipe more than 1 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 100 millimeters, whatever, away from where it's supposed to be as designed? And another cool, I guess, aspect of this technology I think we'll all be aware of is when the fire happened at Notre Dame, through the process of laser scanning and the fact that they had this entire building captured, we were able to essentially have a one-to-one replica and not worry about the blueprints and so on and so forth, and have accurate information about what it looked like at the time and how to replicate that now, right? Another really cool project happening in Canada. This is in Ottawa. This is from Carleton Immersive Media Studios. The center block renovation and all of that. They've gone through and captured the entire project, and the scale, but also the quality. So they're using reality capture with laser scanning and photogrammetry and some really advanced techniques to get some really, really detailed and very sophisticated models, right? And so this is the kind of granularity and scalability that we're actually starting to see in the industry, where 5 or 10 years ago it was cost prohibitive, and not as many innovations were on that front. So now that we've talked about all these buckets and all these areas of I guess technology and construction technology, we're going to start talking about BIM, which in my mind is sort of like the mesh or the glue, if you will. So it'd be a good time to do our next poll here and see sort of, how people feel about improvement in efficiencies in construction. And now, do you folks feel like there is room, right? Okay, good. So I'm doing my job. I think 100% of the answers are going towards yes, which is good to see. And then the next poll I want to run as well, Aaron, if you don't mind, is have people heard of BIM? So BIM is building information modeling, and I'm just curious to see. All right, so our audience is mainly towards the no aspect, which is absolutely fine. And we have some folks who have heard of it. Okay, awesome. So building information modeling essentially is an evolution, you could say, that's occurred, and it's not as simple as just, I don't want to say just 3D modeling. It's what would, in an academic sense, if you want to go that way, is called a socio-technical process, right? So we have people, of course, which is a key. We have technology, and then we have a process. And all three of these are sort of coming together to shift the way that we work. So initially, in the construction, architecture, engineering side of things, you'd have your design idea, and we had drafting, the light tables, if anybody remembers those good old days. And then, with the advent of CAD, we started using computers essentially to do the drafting. And then from there, with the use of 3D models that can contain information, building information modeling really became the key of how you want to create your project. So nowadays, a lot of our construction projects, architectural projects, what have you, may be designed in 3D using software such as Revit or what have you, but the drawings are still in 2D. And just by using a 3D software to do that, I don't want you to think that I don't want people to have the notion that that is BIM, right? Like, we're not in a quote unquote building information modeling project just because we have a 3D model, right? It's really looking at everything that we've talked about in the past, right? So looking at increasing that collaboration, the efficiencies, breaking down those silos, and using this 3D model aspect to give a platform. And essentially, we need to come up with what is a digital workflow to embrace this, right? So the 3D model now has information. We're using this to create our construction documents, or your 2D documents, if you will. You're using this information for not only logistics planning, but also monitoring and what sort of the progress there. We're looking at scheduling, so using the 3D model, tying it to the schedule, so you sort of get an animation, but then you can track this data, tie it back to pieces, and then use a 3D model to get out quantities, right? Quantification in the sense of how many of X do I have, or how many square meters of concrete do I need, and so on and so forth, right? Or cubic meters, pardon me. And then using this information to fabrication. So how we saw in that example with the planes and the cars, and our project where we're using, scanning and all of that, is the fabrication based from these models. So not only for your big structural steel, but for all your little elements, mechanical, sort of like those multi-trade racks, and then using this model-based coordination aspect, right, between the different stakeholders. And of course, visualization, bringing this information into the real world, whether it's with AR or VR, or whether it's simply like the screen that we're looking at. And on the construction side, right, with the advent of BIM, we've really been pushing the implementation, and we use a process of virtual design and construction, VDC, which is essentially taking this 3D model and integrating it with the way that we look at all of these items here, and how can we implement these digital tools and technologies to improve building, right? So although right now we have a lot of traditional projects where we may not be doing it, it is something that we're working towards, not only as a company and as the industry, to implement a lot of these efficiencies. Um, so yeah, that sort of wraps up my spiel, if you will. I'd
Thank
like
you.
to do, yeah, one last, I guess, question you may have on there, and then from there, I hope this changes everyone's perspective now, right? When you think of VR, 3D printing, drones, and technology, does construction come to mind?
Well, thank you so much. While everyone's answering that last poll, Hamad, that was actually Erin and I just sort of sat here with our mouths kind of agape, because we weren't totally like, when the picture of the transformer robots came up, we're like, oh my gosh, it's like, it is wild, and I had really had no idea what personally goes into some of these large scale commercial jobs, and what the technology that's available to people. In your earlier slide, so just to remind everybody that in our chat function, you can ask some questions, and Erin and I are monitoring, but we had some questions come up. And one of them is actually my first one. Is in your earlier slides, you had brought up that our industry is a little perhaps behind becoming digitized, and how long do you think it's going to take our industry to catch up to where everyone else is at?
Yeah, that's a good question. And quite frankly, I don't know if anybody's got a good crystal ball for gauging that, but I think a good kind of gauge is 20-year intervals. So 20 years ago, if I told you, the poll that we're talking about, you're going to see virtual reality, 3D printing, drones on construction projects, it would have been a little bit far-fetched, almost like, okay, that's, Star Wars.
Yes, that's exactly what we thought. We were looking at those photos.
And now the fact that it's sort of happening in the industry, and there's dedicated departments and companies and folks like myself, to see it another 20 years in the future, I think a good gauge would be looking at how did we make cars or airplanes before all the advent of their modern kind of process, right?
Right.
That is where we are with our building process with buildings across the world right now. Is majority of them, we're just dumping labor onto it. Yeah, we may have cool technology, but we're not implementing these processes to that degree yet. So I think the companies and projects that implement them, we're already seeing that within the next 5 years, it's going to start to, get a little bit more large scale. But as an industry, I think 20 years is a good gauge to start to see
20
more.
years, wow.
Yeah, there's just so many people. Just think about mom and pop construction places,
Yeah.
right? And like, there's more small bathroom renovations and stuff than there is billion-dollar hospitals being made, right?
Yes,
So
that's true. Well, that's a great question. That actually brings me a good follow-up to that with regards to the virtual reality and the augmented reality. If this is becoming common on large commercial jobs, how many years do you think before we're going to see it at a residential or a contractor level, before that kind of technology sort of trickles down into that level?
So we've actually seen some some bigger residential builders or players start to venture towards that side. So I think we're starting to see some of the bigger players look into that realm on, your mass residential home builders. I don't want to drop any names, but there's a big Canadian one with an M that recently sort of implemented a BIM program. So that's going on. In terms of smaller subcontractors, even on the commercial side right now, there are not many. There's a lot that have not implemented it. So there's still a lot of growth opportunity on that side. Um, and, again, it's sort of hard to gauge it because you don't want to spend a lot of money if you're, bootstrapping and barely getting by onto doing these processes. But it's when a client comes up to you and really pushes you, where a lot of people that we've talked to, that's when they've shifted their process, right? It's like, hey, our
Right.
clients are asking us to do this now, so that's why we have to do it. So we're at a point residentially that maybe that's happening on the big scale, but not enough that small builders are going to start to do that trend, in my
Right.
opinion.
It's not picked up there yet.
Yeah, but we'll start to see that.
Okay. I have a question from somebody. It says they have a small manufacturing company and they use CAD extensively in production. Would you say there's a revenue threshold before a company should move to a BIM type system?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I mean, it depends on, I guess, looking at your overall operation efficiencies, your metrics, where you think your kind of profit margin versus risk is right now. Is there efficiencies that you foresee are possible? There is going to be an up cost essentially in investing in going to like a full 3D kind of BIM based. Essentially, what you're doing is designed for fabrication and assembly, right? Kind of a process. So what is the revenue threshold? That's going to be sort of hard for me to give you, but you're going to have to look at what is your current kind of, ROI on your current process. When you went before CAD, was your business still there? Was it something that you started with in the CAD environment? If you don't have any precedent there, then you're going to have to look at, okay, if we were to make that shift, that technology that I'm increasing, is it giving you any more production output, more quality, less overhead and labor, anything like that? And then weigh it out over, year 2, 5, plus
Right.
your projections and sort of weigh it out.
Mhm.
There are also, consultants now in this realm. But if you want to reach out to me afterwards, maybe we can touch base
Oh,
and
sure.
yeah, I can
We'll
introduce them to
forward
some
along
folks.
your information then. We'll put it included in the follow-up. So I do have
Absolutely.
another question from an attendee inquiring about what kind of training is required to be effective for everyone on the project in today's world, which is probably a pretty vast question, but
No, absolutely. You know what? One size does not fit all, right?
yeah.
So there's folks who, were pipe fitters and they jumped in and learned how to do 3D modeling, and now, they're running departments and sort of processes for big mechanical contractors that I've worked with. There's folks like myself who have, gone the university route, but more of the technical knowledge from, like a polytechnic helped me out, and
Mhm.
I've gone that way. I'm working with folks who have their masters and PhD and
Wow.
sort of advanced. So I mean, there's no one size fits all. I think for it to be truly effective, the training isn't as much of a deal as it is coming up with the processes. So what I mean is explaining how to the person. You're going to go from maybe, using this pencil and writing down on your paper, then going to your computer and uploading, to use, this tablet. Here's the
Mm.
process now. And that may sound very high level, but there's a lot of things that we do that are very paper based, that entire digital workflow needs to be looked at. And then you can start pulling people in for efficiencies and effective collaboration, right?
Yeah, and really getting everybody on board too, right? Around that, your little diagram about the communication thing, right? And
Yeah,
having everybody understand that. So
exactly.
another question here we have is, in your opinion, what has been the biggest game changer in technology for construction that you think you've seen?
Um, Man, that's a loaded
There's so
question.
much of it.
Yeah, like if you could see my head right now. um, so
Well, is there something that stands out from a project that you thought was just really
I,
special or spectacular?
So, I mean, one of the things is just the advent of tying 2D and 3D together. So,
Okay.
we haven't, like, when I first started, even there wasn't a successful way of doing that very easily. So, you'd still pull up your PDF on one screen and the 3D model on the other screen
Mm,
and try and sort of put the two together. Now we've got these collaboration platforms where you can literally overlay 2D and 3D drawings on the same 3D model and see it sort of like that, or in section, however you want. I think that just from a visual aspect and getting people who didn't believe in looking at 3D models, because believe it or not, that's a big issue
okay.
we face. That advent was huge. Otherwise, I think another one is just the application of overall IT, computer technology into construction, right? So now we have all these
Hmm.
project management softwares. Now we have all these tools. Now we can actually use drones for construction and use 3D printing for all these aspects because of this huge investment wave that came into other industries and all of that. So to me, more of it would be like the technology companies shifting their focus into our industry. A lot of people within our industry partnering up with technology folks and bringing that into the realm. That
Hmm.
would be another one, was that I don't know what the word is, but injection of technology and VC money coming in, right?
Yeah. So you showed us a lot of technology. Typically, like, and I'm not familiar. Where can people see this technology live and in action? Is there typically like a show that this kind of technology is shown at, or is it just through industry you're approached, or is it just something that's slowly going to be leaking onto sort of the regular market as public?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There's a few different ways. I mean, within the industry, I'm part of an organization called CanBIM. Canada BIM Council is the full name, and that is essentially, they're bringing industry together. Whether you're a supplier, manufacturer, or constructor like ourselves, or you're an architect, doesn't matter. Everybody sort of comes together in that organization, and the goal is to provide information and move the industry forward. Other aspects, of course, are sort of more construction technology based trade shows, and design technology, of course, as well. And then, of course, getting in touch with some of your bigger, or maybe not direct customers, but look at folks like Elliston and others similar in the industry. We would be happy to do lunch and learns, or, when things post-COVID kind of world,
Yes.
come do
Yeah.
site tours and stuff like that, right? So,
Well, that's
uh,
great.
yeah, definitely.
That's wonderful. I think that's all the questions I have in the chat. Erin and I are sort of blown away, and now we're even more excited if we can get out of our offices and see this in person on a job site. That is fantastic. I just want to thank you so much, Hamad, for your time today. Just remind everybody that we did record today's webinar, so I will be sending out the links along with Hamad's information, if that's okay with him, if you'd like to
You bet.
contact him directly. And I just want to remind everybody too that we're doing another webinar on August 18th, an HR webinar, Recruit, Develop, Engage, and Retain, which is best practices, and on people management. And again, thank you so much, Hamad, and we will look
My
forward to
pleasure.
talking to you soon. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.